Hello, Internet. I had a plan in place to send bioweapons into the city of Chicago if you didn't go to patreon.com/evacstation. If you didn't support our show, which could help cover cost of the hosting costs, could also allow us more time to perfect each episode. But you'd call my bluff. I couldn't do it. And I certainly wouldn't have bioweapons just sitting around for my partners to use themselves. So please, patreon.com/evacstation. And remember, patriotism is a virtue of the vicious. Welcome to the After Credits Cast, the only film chat podcast that has successfully infiltrated Alcatraz. We're here. It's a little quiet now, but it's fine. I'm here to make some noise with my co-host tonight. I am FBI Director Waseska, and with me today I have got Ryan Patrick Mason.
Indeed.
And then with us, of course, I've got Stanley Goodspeed.
Ah, yeah. I love these. Well done. Well done, sir.
Had some good ones this time. If you want to follow us on the social media, that's Tumblr, Twitter, or Facebook. And if you want to leave comments down below on YouTube or any of the platforms of choice, that includes Peepa, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or Podcast Addict, feel free to do so as well. And reviews help us get more views, so help us out with those too. And of course, you can also reach out to us on email. Ryan, what is that email?
That email is the Candyman is a fucking mercenary. I'm sorry, excuse me. That email is evacstation@gmail.com.
Indeed. We'll do a quick round of what you're watching out of the way first, and we'll jump right into this. Gentlemen, what have you been watching?
Let me see.
I went first last time.
Damn it. I actually had... Yes! In following... things that my girlfriend is introducing me to, I'm finally getting to actually dive into the History Channel's show Vikings, which it's really, really good. I find it's really well done, and the way I know that is because I'm kind of torn on whether or not to like the characters, because they tell a good story, a good dramatic story, but it doesn't shy away from the fact that at the end of the day they're fucking Vikings and they went across the ocean to raid and pillage and murder people for the fuck of it. So it's a moral conundrum that I actually enjoy wrestling with, but it's a really, really good show. We're in the middle of season 2 now, I believe.
Fun fact, Ryan, Vikings actually came to America before Christopher Columbus. You know what happened? Native Americans kicked them the fuck out.
Yep.
But you white fuckers, all you white fuckers out there who took over the land, couldn't get away, could you? You had to come back, you had to fucking use smallpox. Terrible people, I tell you what.
Chemical warfare, which actually relates to the podcast where you're going to talk about.
Jesus Christ, I didn't realize that.
That's a
what
segue.
A fucking segue.
Segue.
Yeah, boys.
Well, before we jump into the movie, though, I can do a what you're watching real quick, because, Ryan, it's been 2 weeks since the last one. It's time for Adventures in Bloodborne.
Yes, where are you?
So, Bo, to catch you up, Bloodborne is a game on the PlayStation 4 that Ryan has played all the way through. I have just gotten back into it, having never beaten it. So where I'm at right now, I was stuck on the rooftop boss fight, Martyr Logarius. He's this big explosions, magic casting piece of shit. I was stuck on him for like the longest time. I think I maybe had like 24 attempts at him.
In the Castle Bloodhurst, right?
Castle Canehurst, yes.
Canehurst.
And the whole level was not bad, actually. Fighting the ghost bitches, fighting the needles, shooting little assholes. I even learned how to handle the blood-starved beasts or blood-sucking demons, whatever they were. I handled those fine. They're still not easy to fight, but fine.
Irritating, yeah.
Yeah. I went back to another level before I finished Logarius and fought Dark Pearl Beast because I skipped him completely. And got some new weapons for that. And I even accidentally came across an amygdala, which I'm sure...
Hey!
Yeah, I went off a beaten path, found this little, like, tower thing, and I went into this room, and I'm like, oh, there's a door, let me get to it. and suddenly I get picked up, and this amygdala shows up. Like, oh, I probably shouldn't.
Oh,
be here yet.
you just wandered into the fucking nightmare frontier just for fun. Hey,
I need to level up with more blood echoes, and I couldn't find him fighting Logarius all day. So how I beat Logarius after 21 tries, I think. I started up the game the other day, and immediately when I started up the game, I died, like, because I turned it off in the middle of a death sequence. So I turned it on, and then he was like, "You died." I'm like, "Oh, this is starting off really well." I get back in there. I get back to the fight. And I'm like, okay, I'm a little rusty. I haven't played this in like 5 or 6 days. We'll see how I do. I fight him, and for a while it's a little rough, but I'm getting the counters. I'm actually landing the shots. I'm like, okay, so I'm getting the visceral attacks I need. And one by one we're hitting, and I'm like, okay, this is going better than normal. Maybe I'll actually get to like the phase 3 or whatever this is. He doesn't actually power up. I actually prevent him from powering up. And I actually shoot the sword when he plants in the ground like 2 different times. So I actually prevent his fucking sword spiral sphere from taking off. So kudos to me on that one. I actually beat him on the first attempt that session. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, motherfucker, I spent 21 different attempts on this thing, and now I finally beat him. Jesus Christ.
That's how it goes with some of the Bloodborne style games, the Dark Souls styles games. Like, I find, like, you kind of throw yourself against a brick wall, like, take some time away from it, and you come back, and all of that's just kind of embedded in you now, so you don't have to really think about it, and you've automatically notably improved because you're not as frustrated and you're not as tired, but you still have those reactions.
Well, that was my method of going into it. I would do 3 or 5 attempts and then step away before I got too frustrated.
Yep.
And the thing that really interested me the most, though, is in the previous round of attempts, all my shots are missing. I couldn't land a single one of them. I was locked onto them, so I don't know why they weren't hitting. This time around, they all hit. And I'm like, okay, either I'm getting better, the game's getting less assholey to me, or luck is just on my side today. Whatever it is, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Well, congrats, man, dude. That's good stuff.
Yep. And so now I'm venturing into Bergenworth, and oh boy, this is gonna be fun. We'll continue that though next time on the Adventures of Bloodborne. Bo, did you want to have anything to add to the what you watching this week? Is Bo still alive? I think Bo's dead. Well, with that in mind...
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, guys. No, very much enjoyed that conversation, but I had no idea what you guys were talking about. But I mentioned it before, but Letterkenny. If you guys haven't seen it, it's Always Sunny meets Trailer Park Boys. It's gaining more and more attention out there. Great analogy for the show. It's kind of like the Fight Club in that scene where they're just talking about Fight Club and they're not supposed to mention it. You will say a reference line to this show and people will spit it back to you, and it kind of is that little like wink of like, oh, I know what you're talking about, but it's still not popular enough to where like people are like overdoing it. Great show, Canadian show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meets Trailer Park Boys. It's one of the most like quick-witted, fast-paced jokes coming at you. Like, you almost have to pause it just to, like, let everything absorb. I highly suggest watching it. It's on Hulu. If you don't love it, then you ain't on my level, and I don't want to talk to you no more.
Yeah, no, I personally love that show. It's
yes.
Like, you know what? It's like Shakespeare, only sped up times 10. And the vernacular is Canadian trailer park hitch slang.
It's great.
That's what it is, and it's amazing.
It's great. I have half brothers and sisters that I would visit during the summertime, and I would go to this place called Claresholm, Alberta, and it literally was like a half-mile town. It was a town that you drive through in Iowa where you have to go to like 35 miles an hour for like a split second, and then you're back up to like highway speed. A very similar town, and it reminds me so much of it that like they just nailed not the stereotype of it, but just like the way the culture works in those areas, and like the different like sort of like nuance of characters that come through there. And very good show, and I hope it great success, and I think it's gonna be successful based on the reaction from a lot of people.
Excellent. Well, we'll move into tonight's film. Tonight, our taste of Cage is going to be The Rock, released in 1996, directed by Michael Transformer Bay, and written by David Weisberg and Douglas Cook. The film earned a total of $335,062,000 at the box office worldwide, which is about 4.5 times what it cost, which is pretty dang good.
Fucking great.
For 96 money, no less. And it helps that we have a cast with the likes of Vanessa Marcil, Michael Biehn, okay. William Forsythe, David Morse, John Spencer,
Young William Forsythe,
Ed Harris, the original James Bond, Sean Connery, and the man of the hour himself, Nicolas Cage. This movie has won a total of 9 awards, and this includes the following: a German Screen Award for reasons, an MTV and TV Award for Best On-Screen Duo for Cage and Connery, the BMI Music Award for Hans Zimmer, 2 Blockbuster Entertainment Awards for Favorite Actor and Supporting Actor, Favorite Movie of the Year from the Show West Convention, and the Worst Foreign Film from the Yoga Awards. Who? What? Who are the Yoga Awards? What are these?
The fuck? The Yoga Awards? What the?
That's random.
That is random as hell.
I find it interesting that all these German awards I keep reading don't list the reason it wins the award, it just wins the award. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll write it down. It's fine.
That's their explanation, reasons.
Yep. I could look into what these German awards are for, but I'm already looking up all this shit as it is. You know what?
Yeah, based on your last explanation of like the awards, there was another German award that you mentioned.
Yep.
I'm starting to get intrigued by the whole German award process.
Well, I can look up real quick what the German Screen Awards go for. If Ryan wants to jump into fun facts, I do so.
100%, yes, sir. So, according to the director, Michael Bay, the script was written much more straight and serious than the final movie. Most of the humorous moments and lines were actually improvised during the filming. Much of Nicolas Cage's dialogue was ad-libbed, including the Seuss's butthole line, which Michael Bay wanted to cut, but Cage insisted on having. I love it. I 100% love it.
Oh, that's great.
Next up, Sir Sean Connery insisted that the producers build a cabin for him on Alcatraz, as he didn't want to travel from the mainland to the island every day. And he actually got what he asked for. It's fucking James Bond. You're damn right we're going to build you a cabin real fast. Last but not least, there were tensions during the shooting between director Michael Bay and Walt Disney Studio executives who were supervising the production. On the commentary track for the DVD, Bay recalls a time when he was preparing to leave the set for a meeting with the executives and was approached by Sir Sean Connery in golfing attire. Now, Connery, who also produced this movie, asked Bay where was he going, and when Bay explained that he had a meeting with the executives, Connery asked if he could accompany him. Bay complied, and when Bay arrived in the conference room, the executives' jaws dropped when they saw Connery appear behind him. According to Bay, Connery then stood up for him and insisted that he was doing a good job and should be left alone.
Shout out to Connery. That's a good guy right there.
Well, good. Like, he stood up for what he thought mattered. Because this was a great movie.
So, I looked it up, and I have answers for you, gentlemen. So, these 2 Golden German Awards have 2 different purposes, and they basically are about sales. They're not about any film quality, which is something I didn't know, and I wish IMDb had mentioned it. So, the Golden Bogey Award we mentioned for Con Air, that is for selling, or let's see, prize, for 3 million people within 30 days. Number of people who've seen it.
Mm.
And then for the Golden Screen Award, which is the Golden Lewand, or Lewand, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, that is for 3 million tickets sold in 18 months.
Okay. And those are international tickets?
I believe I want to say so because well, it could be just German, maybe. Let me double check and make sure, but I think it's just for Germany.
It makes sense. If it's a German award, it would make sense.
It doesn't say specifically within the country, but I would have to assume it is.
All right. Well,
we learned a thing.
We've got. Well, let's hear some initial thoughts from you, gentlemen, before we get into the synopsis.
I can take a quick stab at it. From a cinematic perspective, this one's a bit rough. A lot of jump cuts, a lot of camera shaky nonsense going on, but it is not unredeemable. Its characters are fun, the plot's over the top, and it's just a damn good time.
Yeah, it was great. The jump cuts were super edgy. Keep in mind, I'm a young kid watching this movie, so my first introduction,
yep.
Like, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like these jump cuts, like, provided this certain, like, suspense of, like, what's going on? And up until this point, which I feel like this movie is Nick Cage's pinnacle acting point. And so I was completely bought into the whole Nick Cage situation. And, of course, you have Sean Connery, who I was a huge fan of, not necessarily from the James Bond movies, but, like, some of his other works that he did. And I was totally tricked into thinking that this movie was going to be great. And it really, really was. And I loved it. Ed Harris with the voiceovers and builds this suspense of emotion that this, military American. And I think this is like one of the best movies of 90s action blockbusters.
Nice.
Which is arguably, like, not saying that it's going to be a great movie per se, but as far as action movies, it's going to be very, very good.
Yeah. So this one holds a special place in my heart. It's definitely one of my go-to action classics. The nostalgia has not worn off one bit when I watched this movie again. This was my childhood in a nutshell. I 100% loved the pairing of Cage and Connery. I thought they worked off each other really, really well. And that Connery had a level of snark to him that I didn't see coming when I originally saw it, but it really paired well with Nicolas Cage. So I thought they played off each other really fun. I personally am a big fan of kind of clippy dialogue in movies. I mean, I'm an Aaron Sorkin fan, so yeah, that's my shit. So the dialogue in this movie also really got me going. I just loved hearing it. I loved the conversations, the kind of monologues when people are monologuing off at each other, which was really, really fun. All in all, it's a fantastic movie. I know, with deep diving into it, it's not going to be like a stellar cinematic masterpiece, but god damn it, it's a classic action movie, and I think it's one of his best.
Well, diving into it, let's jump into synopsis. What do you boys say?
Let's do it.
I just want to say, Ryan, that was a very beautiful thing you just said. I agree with you so much about. We're gonna have fun with this one. Let's get it going. Aaron, go ahead, buddy.
Fed up with the government treating veterans like shit, General Francis Ajax Hummel decides to become a terrorist. He gets his men and enlists the help of essentially mercenaries to steal bioweapons and take over the tourist island of Alcatraz for their base. He demands $100 billion. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong movie. Just $100 million to his slushy fund. Obviously, the government does not negotiate with terrorists, or at least they tell you that, but they can give them weapons to destabilize countries all for the sake of getting oil. I mean communists. So, they assemble a team of soldiers who will mindlessly do their bidding without question, because otherwise the moral questions of this film will probably make them join Hummel's side. That was a rant. Enter Stanley Goodspeed, a chemical weapons expert who hates needles and swearing, but loves pressure and awkward rooftop sex.
What?
He's called to San Fran, as the kids call it, to meet with the FBI director, Womack, and other government officials. And yes, they will sandbag each other in this film, too, because that's what the government does in the 90s, apparently. They will also pull totally not James Bond from his lifetime prison sentence to help infiltrate Alcatraz with previous escape experience. He tricks the suits, giving him the opportunity to escape. Ridiculous car chase happens. He meets his daughter, which gives Stan pause for turning him in. Deciding to live and let die, Mason agrees to help and insists on leading the team to Alcatraz. He also tells Stan he was formerly on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
I'm here for this. I'm here for it. Let's do it.
The team arrives and they question if Mason Doctor knows what he's doing. Proving he can do more than only escape twice, he gets them to what's essentially Death's Shower, where a standoff happens. It goes completely off the rails. Mason, however, would rather die another day and tries to get the fuck out. Stan tries to stop him, but Mason is the man with the golden gun. Sorry, guns. Stan is powerless to do so. Francis's goons then drop bombs, forcing them out of hiding. Mason decides to join Stan, showing off his license to kill, while Stan disarms the bombs with his golden fingers.
This is hurting.
Time is running short, and the government agencies are bickering like children to decide what they need to do, and they end up deciding to nuke the whole island because the stakes are not high enough. The stakes are not enough. There we go, that's what I meant to say. Mason tries to approach Francis and talk him down, while Stan deals with the final bombs. Francis is eventually betrayed by his men for octopussing out and blowing up people. With Francis's men now trying to take over, Stan has to finish the last bomb, or missile, or whatever. Mason brings down one of the goons with a view to kill on Stan, while Stan completes his mission before shoving one of those thunderballs right into a goon's mouth. They send the flare up to let the idiot government know that everything is fine. He lets Mason escape and become a Spectre before the Fed arrive. Mason gives him a clue for Stan's eyes only, leading him to the microfilm he was incarcerated for. Oh, and Stan gets married because diamonds are forever.
God damn it. Well played, you son of a bitch.
It's not as good as my Steppenwolf one, but it was pretty solid.
That's pretty damn solid.
That was great.
So, gentlemen,
what
do you think of this?
Oh, man. This had every great action trope, like, between building up, like, the Americana, like, spirit of rooting behind, like, your warrior coming back from, and then, like, the lost wife and Ed Harris and Sean Connery's character was so charming, and this was awesome. I love this movie. I haven't seen for a while, and I think it still holds up from back in the day.
Indeed. Let's see where I can start here with this one. So, I think it's really good, but I do have a gripe or two, because I always have to have a gripe or two. And my first one is this. The camera work in this film, at least in the opening sequence and the car chase sequence especially, it kind of bothered me a bit. And it's not just the jump cuts we mentioned earlier, but it was shaky cam all over the fucking place.
I don't inherently have an issue with shaky cam. I mean, I don't particularly get motion sick when watching movies, and I know that some people do, but because I don't, I think that's one of the reasons why I generally like found footage movies. But I think the camera work gives off this almost visceral feeling, like you're actually in the action and you're seeing everything kind of move erratically because everything is happening all at once, and you're like, holy shit. It would feel too polished if everything was just smooth cut to smooth cut. Agreed. So yeah.
And this is before we saw Fast and the Furious. This is kind of edgy to me because I watched this, very young, and it was kind of I think the shaky camera work was kind of a cover up for the lack of technology in CGI. So if you look at Transformers down the road, they still had those that's when it was characters, but when they would go to the CGI effect, it would was still that shakiness, but like it still would was a little bit more entertaining than this movie per se, because they could add that CG effect. And I think that's what was kind of missing in the later movies of Michael Bay and this one, and the heavy usage of the shaky scenes, or the shaky camera work, because they didn't quite have the CGI to back it up at the time.
I don't know if I agree with that. And I think shaky cam, when used in conjunction with a whole bunch of other things, can become too much. And I specifically have that gripe with Transformers, because there's so much visual noise in all of those movies that if the camera starts shaking in the midst of this nonsense, I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at. So the realism that the shaky cam kind of lends the shot, and it feels like it's more of a practical filming example, as opposed to we cut all of this and put fucking CGI cars into it. Exactly. It actually makes it feel like more real and more authentic, which is why I like it in The Rock.
Yeah, and I just feel like it was just a cover up for the lack of technology at the time. Yeah. And it was kind of a new age technique at the time. It's like, whoa, my eyes are, because they didn't use that so much. If you look at like a movie like a Top Gun, they didn't use so much like shaky camera, and that was very much like a legendary action movie at the time. But using that technique, more of a visual trick that they kind of overdid in this movie, because they just simply didn't have the technology at the time.
Mm.
Yeah. I would say that it didn't work for me personally. It doesn't really ruin the film, but the shaky cam doesn't work for me here. I think my thing is not so much that I don't want my action to be visceral. I think the shaky cam works when it's found footage for sure, because you're trying to give the idea that this is an amateur filmmaker recording what's happening. And that, to me, works fine. In a situation like this, though, I'm already well aware this is a movie. And I don't need some fancy or lack of tripods or anything like that to convince me that it's like real life. I'm like, I know it's a movie. Just film it like a movie, right, and I'll be fine. That's all I need.
Right.
That's a fair critique.
If you're not taking the premise of like Cloverfield and the fact that like that was shaky cam intentionally, or like a Blair Witch Project, that was shaky cam intentionally, like it just necessarily wasn't needed. However, the storyline and the other tropes that they play in this movie, I thought were just great.
Oh yeah.
Like, great action, just a great action story. And I was always obsessed with before this movie with Alcatraz as a prison, just because like no one escapes from the Rock, and I think they really played the Alcatraz very well as a character in this movie. In the sense, it really brought it to life, and like the fact that I took a trip to Alcatraz before the movie or after the movie, and it was just really cool to see it and to know that like there was like a possible like live action, battle scene. Like it was like an army base that was revived in the new age, and I thought that was so cool and just a great like story point to like really get you excited as an audience.
That actually brings me to another question here. I'm glad you brought it up. So, I found this out recently, listening to one of their podcasts. I don't remember which one it was, but if I remember, I'll put a link down below. But basically, when the government gives a film permission to use weapons, military bases, uniforms, etc., they generally sign that stuff out to the filmmakers, the production studio, whatever. And there's usually limits on how critical they can be, or how critical they can portray the military. And on top of that, too, Michael Bay in various films is shown to fetishize the military in very interesting ways. However, this film kind of takes a critical stance at the military-industrial complex, and even has a military unit becoming a villain with some really solid motivations. So I guess my question is, how do you think they pulled that off with this? And what are your thoughts on the general's motives and message?
I think the way they got it passed, I think they did it with a couple of reasons. Ultimately, that the main antagonist protagonist of the film, General Hummel, while having good motives, ultimately realized the fucked up thing that he was doing. And that the antagonists of the film, like, it didn't end up being like, oh, well, it's the government itself that's actually the real enemy of the movie, but rather it's this guy who has a really good point, but contracted out to a bunch of dishonorable kind of murderers in U.S. uniform that opted to take people hostage and what have you. I think it's like, now that you bring it up, it's very, very surprising that they were actually able to get that done.
Right?
Yeah, it's actually really surprising, specifically because I can't think of a Michael Bay film that happened before The Rock. Like, this is my first experience with him. What other, like, do you know if he did any work with the military in his films before this? Because this is a pretty big opening bet.
I'm looking up his filmography right now if you want to vamp a little bit.
You've got me thinking now.
Well, especially at the time, too, like, it came out in 96, so we're kind of off the Persian War, like, America at the time, what I remember during, like, kind of the early 90s, it was very, like, kind of pro-military. And, yeah, the Oklahoma City bombing, which ended up being, like, someone from the inside, you know, an American. And so there's kind of this, like, tension between the military and how much they had going on. Like, we were really heavy in battle at the time, for the 90s anyway. And so, like, there's just a little bit more of, like, an awareness of, like, how much the military was around everything. So I think the story made it kind of relatable to people. But it was also very edgy in the sense that it was like a former, you know, kind of like going against the government. But at the time, too, we also had, you know, Steven Seagal movies, which were heavy, like, military driven and like a soldier. We're kind of off the cusp of Rambo, so to speak. You know, Sylvester Stallone being ex-military, being oppressed for, like, this type of character. So I wonder, you know, kind of that whole sense of the word, like, how this kind of causes shock and controversy as far as the storyline.
So that's a very good point. That's a very good point now that you bring it up.
So according to an IMDb search, he does a lot of music videos prior to his film career, but his first actual film is in 1995, a year before this, with Bad Boys.
Which very much the same tone. Yeah, you could definitely tell that was Michael Bay influence.
Yeah, and Bad Boys was definitely a good summer blockbuster hit. So I'd argue that not only was the general thrust of the story, like, painting a good picture, not only of the military because they were able to save the day and solve the threat, but also the struggles that military men face. I think that, in conjunction with the fact that Michael Bay was proven to have done a big blockbuster hit, and they want a big summer blockbuster to feature the military, like, really, really cool, back in 1996. I think it's an understandable bet that they made on Michael Bay, and it obviously paid off because they continued to work with him with Armageddon, with Pearl Harbor, Transformers, and just a bunch of other stuff.
I would love to see a documentary covering, like, just the history of film with the military. I'm really curious about that.
Not that the military actually uses the American film industry as propaganda, of course. No,
not at all. Not at all.
No.
Sort of not to feel conflicts in the Middle East to destabilize nations, but that's another discussion for another day.
As of now, this podcast just got shut down.
Yeah. And content flag.
Well, we tried. Okay, so go on to the general, because he's actually a very interesting character, surprisingly, for a villain in an action film.
Francis X. Hummel, United
Man.
States Marine Corps from Alcatraz.
Such a sad funeral of his wife. Like, he was the only one there. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
it was
it was rough.
It had like six of like a 21 gun salute, which I thought that was for like former soldiers, not wives of soldiers. But anyway, so they do that and like they leave, and it's just him talking to the stone, which is very motivating, which kind of plays to that whole trope I was talking about like having that like dignified speech that really like sold you on like why this flawed character meant what he was meant to do. Like, you're kind of on his side for like a certain part of the movie.
Until they start taking hostages and threatening people with chemical weapons. But yeah,
they didn't take hostages in the sense that it was more of like a political standpoint versus like actual like violence, and like these people, their lives were never in danger because they're there for a bigger point, which I thought like was kind of cool. Like, it developed a little level of complexity to it, and then you had the funniness and Nick Cage's part. I thought he was just so great in this movie because like he was like a different character where he's kind of like a bumbling sort of like he didn't play like that confident role like he usually plays, where he was more of just kind of like the goofball kind of guy. He's the Matthew Broderick of like Godzilla, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, he's confident in his area of expertise. You know, like you see him like disarming a bomb in the midst of like corrosive gas and like whatnot. Like, he's got it. You know, like when it comes to like science and what have you. But throwing him out in the field, like, it's just like, shit, fucking, okay, jump in this car. I don't fucking know what I'm doing anymore.
I thought they portrayed that very well. Like, they really, like, that first scene, they painted this really good picture of, like, how bad that chemical was. And when you look at it, like, missiles being launched, like, all over San Francisco, like, that was a really good visualization of, like, how bad this attack's gonna be. Like, you're legitimately scared at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to call attention to the fact that during the standoff between the general's people and the incoming military, once things start happening, the shootout begins, the general actually is calling for a ceasefire, and later he even redirects the missile during the when they're launching the attack of that one football stadium. So I guess my question to you is, do you feel like he ever intended to carry out his threats, or was it all a change of heart at the last minute?
But what do you think?
I think his intentions were pure the whole time. I think he was a complete control freak. So when he's talking about the ceasefire, he was talking about the ceasefire because it was an incidental shooting. Like, that was outside of his calculated plan. Like, he didn't want the shooting go down. He didn't want to he didn't want that situation to break down the way it did. And I think that just shows how much of a control freak, in the fact that he wanted to execute this beautiful plan. Like, he's been planning this for so long, you know, and now it was finally right. He gave his piece to his wife at the funeral, at her tombstone. So, and I think he had this, you know, calculated plan, and that ceasefire, when he was yelling it, you know, that became from, you know, someone knocking over a rock, or the, you know, little, like, debris, so to speak, the classic trope, like I was saying before, and everyone starts shooting each other. Like, it broke away from his original plan, and I think that just really just bothered him.
I disagree. I feel like the plan in and of itself, but I think it was inherently flawed because for all of his talk, I don't think he really meant to harm anyone. Like, I think his goal was to attain a really good defensible tactical position and to force the government into a position where they literally couldn't make a move on him for fear that he would execute hostages that he had, or that he would fire off these missiles that he obtained, and thousands of people would be on the line. He was a force to really get like what he wanted, but the fatal flaw in his plan was that he was never fully prepared to commit to it, because at the end of the day, General Hummel is not a horrible man. You know, he wants to honor the men that have fallen under his command and to call out the government that he feels failed them. But that never extends in his mind to harming innocent people or to killing brothers in the armed forces. So when he calls for the ceasefire, I think it's absolutely what he doesn't want to happen, because he doesn't want more in vain. He obtained a strong tactical position. Like, they were all surrounded. They all had the high ground on them. They literally had them covered instantly. And he's like, okay, tactically, there's no way you can win. Put down your arms. We'll put you in the brig. We'll hold you guys until the plan is over. But you can't win, so you won't fight. And the fact that the fight ended up happening anyway, he feels is a failure on his part. And I think that's where his plan starts to fall apart, when he realizes that the position that he's put himself in and the men that he's surrounded himself with, this literally can't end without force. And that's where he painted himself into a corner.
I like that. That was a very good breakdown. I really
Very
appreciate
interesting.
That.
Yeah. You know, the funny part is, I think we probably put more thought and effort into this podcast and about this plot than the actual producers of this movie.
Oh,
that's a possibility, but
I wouldn't go that far. But yeah.
I mean, it still had its same quick cuts, that you've seen in all of Michael Bay's movies, and the music score being very kind of overwhelming and very everything seems so motivational.
The music score, I want to hit that real quick. Guys, so we were sitting there watching this during I think it was the chase sequence. It might be later, but it might be the chase sequence. And I was just listening to this, and I thought to myself, this sounds very familiar. So I turn over to Amanda, and I'm like, hey, does this music sound like... And she finishes my sentence saying Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm like, yes! And we're both just hearing Pirates of the Caribbean in the soundtrack here. I know it's not the same, but it's so very similar.
No, totally. I kept having the Michael Bolton A Lost Lonely Boy song playing in my head. The parody did off that. Did you do around that? Because it sounds exactly there. He had to have reused some of these musical score points because they're so familiar to later movies that he'd done.
It has to be, because I think it's the same production studio as Pirates, so maybe they was just
it's Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer did the music for Pirates and for this movie. It makes sense.
It totally makes sense. It was so familiar. It was I'm glad you...
It was just a little detail we caught when we were watching. I just love that we both caught it at the same time. It was fucking crazy. Okay.
So dramatic with this. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I'm listening to it now.
Nice. Okay. 2 big questions I want to hit before we move on. Number 1, do you believe there's a deeper reason behind Stan's refusal to use the injections, or is it simply a fear of needles? And if so, does it mean that what does it mean that something like this fear can override the threat of deadly toxins and explosives? I may have put more thought in this question than needed, but I was just curious what you guys think.
I mean, I think it was just it's a fun and interesting character trait to have the super scientist who's really good with biochemical things, who's afraid of needles. But I mean, a lot of the movie is him overcoming fear of crazy shit. it says something that you're introduced to this character who's able to disarm a bomb in the middle of with a clock fucking ticking down, but then ask the field agent for a sidearm because he left it in the drawer. I think like those two dualities are like integral to the character. A lot of the movie is him taking that metal that he has within himself and actually applying it to other shit. And at the end of the day, when you're poisoned with VX gas and you literally have to do this or else you'll die, I mean, I think he's able to overcome that fear, which is good. That's a nice character arc for him.
No, I agree. I think, and that this is a weird relation, but like completely unrelatable. But like sometimes, like in the kitchen, your charbroil will catch on fire underneath like old food bits that haven't been cleaned out, and people will freak out like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" Well, instead of like taking all these dramatic, crazy measures to put out that fire, just calm down, wrap up the aluminum foil you got on there, be cool, let it burn out, you know what I mean? Don't freak out. And I think that's the same approach to where, like, don't cause this big problem, you don't have to do this, just give me, like, 5 fucking seconds, and I can solve everyone's problem and everything's fine. And I think that's, like, the approach that they're kind of taking. At least that's how I relate to that moment.
Gotcha. Final question here. So there's a fan theory that exists. This is why I made all the James Bond references earlier. A fan theory exists that John Mason is actually James Bond, but in his older years. Do you subscribe to this theory, or did this come from Zeus's butthole?
Bo, what do you think on that?
Oh man, I love that. I wish I was more prepared for that, because I'd like to really kind of geek out on that.
They drop a lot of references that could really click with that, though. I actually kind of like the idea.
Yeah, I think, just like I said before, I think we're putting more, like, nerd effort into this than the actual producers put into this. And they were just putting, like, kitschy jokes in there. But they did a really good job of, like, adding some, like, maybe if we did a little bit more research on the writers of it, we could see, like, maybe there were some, like, good writing moments where they got some good in-depth jokes, but I don't think it was ever meant to be that like, creative. It just kind of sort of just worked.
I think it was intentionally vague to facilitate that thought, like, really being drawn out. Because, like, there's no way in hell that they got licensing from MGM Grand to actually have this person be like older James Bond. There's no way in hell. But if they leave it intentionally vague, they drop enough hints and clues where it could fit, and the fact that it's fucking Sean Connery, like having the idea that Nicolas Cage is running around with older prison escapist James Bond, who's a little less suave and debonair, but kind of more brutal now in his older years. I mean, it definitely drives ticket sales. So you get the association without actually having to commit to it. You get to have your cake and eat it too. So I think that was an intentional move to be purposefully vague, but also leave some hints towards it by the
right. And yeah, it was definitely more of a commercial reason. Like, it wasn't meant to, like, this is like pre-Easter eggs. Like, you didn't see the Easter eggs in movies back then like you do now. I think this is just like a marketing ploy, just something to, like, keep the crowd going. But I don't think it's as in depth as it really is.
That's fair. But I do like the idea, though, and I would love to see someone who was on this project just definitively kind of say, yeah, no, we were trying to do that. just for funsies.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Like the group of writers be like, no, we intentionally were trying. We realized this movie was going to be generic as it was. Like, and we tried to like do something for the fans. It'd be nice to hear that, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that was the intention.
Plus, there are people who say that if this did count as a James Bond film, sort of, it would actually give... I think it said that it would give Sean Connery the record by one film, then, for most appearances. Which,
No
I mean...
way. Oh, no. This is definitely not a James Bond movie.
But if it was, though, that's what they're saying.
But, yeah. Well, if the last 3 movies he did after that would make him that much more of a James Bond movie.
I'm just saying.
And I'm saying you shouldn't say that, sir.
Well, speaking of saying things, if y'all want to reach out and say stuff to us, you can go to Tumblr, Twitter, or Facebook. You can also reach out to us at our email. Ryan, what is that email?
That email is, I don't suppose you know the etymology of your name. Goodspeed. I mean, sorry, got something stuck in my throat. That is evacstation@gmail.com.
I like it.
That was good.
I like it.
Great reference. Great impression too, by the way.
That's a
awesome.
Horrible Sean Connery.
No, I disagree. I don't know if like my earbuds are clogged or something. But I like that.
I've got a cold. I can't do that accent for shit on my best day, man.
Bo.
Thank you, though. You're very kind.
I think maybe it takes a cold for you to do it well. Maybe that's the thing.
You should have listened to him when we were doing the Apocalypse podcast for X-Men. He did a fucking killer, like, Apocalypse voice. It was scary. Anyway, where was I at? Yes, so, we'll move on to ranking the film here real quick. So for those who are listening, that is silver, gold, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, stone, dirt, or shit. All the colors in between. We rank the movie based on just how we feel about it. And we can compare it to however we want. Other films within the theme, however you want to do it. With that in mind, who would like to rank this movie first?
All right. Well, for me, this is a mainstay. This is a... If I need to feel better, I watch this movie. This is like my come home movie. I love the action. I love the comedy. I love the depth of storytelling that they're trying to do with like the actual issues that they're bringing up with how veterans are treated in this country. And I like the interplay and the dialogue between the characters. I'm trying not to be as platinum heavy for this particular run since we're only doing 5, and I know I'm pretty sure I already know what my platinum. I'm going to give a gold because this is definitely gold standard. It is 90s action at its finest.
So how does that not make it platinum?
Because I'm only trying to give out 1 platinum, and it's not better than the other movie that we're going to talk about later.
I don't know. I'm a platinum whore, so.
I will go gold as well. I will actually say I was debating between gold and silver, but I think the conversation we had, getting into the depth of this film and what it actually attempts to do, it surprised me a little bit what we got out of it, because it was a Michael Bay film, it's a Nick Cage film. It's just one of those things where I didn't expect it to be as deep and meaningful as it was, and it was actually really
It's better
impressive.
than it has a right to be, honestly.
Yeah. I think with time I might change it, who knows, but for now I do think gold is a pretty solid ranking for it. I think if you have not seen it, give it a shot. The Rock is actually pretty good. Also, so is Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's pretty good too. Unrelated.
Indeed.
Yeah, that fucked my Google search up.
A little bit, yes.
It took me a little bit to. I had to dig deep a little bit to get the movie rental up.
Well, so thank you.
So my ranking on this,
Okay.
I didn't get a ranking in.
I thought you were going to platinum.
Well, yeah, but the only reason why I'll give this a platinum because I feel like out of all Nick Cage movies, aside it being a Nick Cage movie, it's not a platinum Nick Cage movie. But when it comes down to like 90s blockbuster, I think this was the pinnacle of like great storyline. It had a lot of emotion, a lot of it had a kind of like an understood tone to it. Had, you know, it wasn't heavy with like women being a jet, minus like the scenes it had. It wasn't near as bad as like 90% of Michael Bay movies. I thought it was awesome. I'm gonna give it a golden platinum, not quite platinum, but it was a really good movie, held up well. And I'll probably watch it probably next month or two just because I was that entertained by it.
Very good, very good. Well, next week, y'all will be listening to us talk about Bad Lieutenant, Port of New Orleans. Port of Call, New Orleans, I should say. And until then, thank you for listening, and we'll see you after the credits.
Peace.